All right, so back again, we were picking up our conversation of culture, and we talked a little bit about how that imposes and deals with police as a whole, right? And how it affects the ability for people to do that. We talked a lot about discretion in decision making processes. So we'll go a little bit more in how discretion plays out and why it can be an issue with respect to crime. So if we think about, something simple as like an arrest or, an incident of some kind where police have contact, there's a lot of different things that can play a role in the decision making of an officer. So one, right, is obviously going to be, like the crime in question, right? Like if someone believes that it's going to be, like a relatively minor crime versus a very serious crime, is going to affect police decisions in the moment. Obviously, we hope police, are not taking any kind of break from anything, but we really, really want to focus on, more serious, more violent kind of stuff as well, right? At the same time, with any kind of crime that comes in, we're also concerned about issues related to the victim. So, when we think about the victim, we're going to think about the relationship the victim has to the alleged offender. We're going to think about if they're family members, if they're strangers, is it a friend or foe or something like that, right? Because typically police are more interested in arresting or doing harm to doing some other action to someone if it's a stranger acquaintance, right? If it's a personal relationship, such as like a partner, child, whatever, then the police are going to behave differently because they don't want to disrupt like a family kind of network as well, right? So they're going to pay attention to offender-victim relationship when making a decision, right, as well. There's also going to be concerns about the environment. So how, is it related to, are there a lot of people around? Is it a high crime area? Is it something where the community culture is permissive of certain things or is not permissive of certain things? Why or why not? Things like that. Because that also can play a role in like how something is or is not being effective as well. And in the confluence of this, right, we think about department mandates, where some departments take certain crimes more seriously than others. They're viewed more quickly. Perhaps the department is going to be more intolerant of misbehavior. So an officer is going to try to do whatever they can to play by the rules of the department because that's ultimately, what's going to predict whether or not they keep their job or, if they have a problem or not, right? Or if the department tells them to do a certain thing, if they were trained a certain way and so on, that creates an issue as well. Whenever they're also at a scene, though, they also have to consider, peer factors where they are related to, what are my peers going to say? If I have my cop buddy here or a senior or superior, I have to maintain appearances, especially since police culture is such a strong thing going on. So if there's an issue with the police as a peer that are influencing your decision, it makes it like a little bit harder. You feel almost pressured to behave and act in a certain way because of that. Similarly, there's also issues to consider with a suspect themselves, right? If a suspect is seen as being aggressive, if they are rude or they're not complying, they're resisting investigations, they're, kind of have an attitude about it, a police officer is more likely to take a more aggressive, action towards them, right? So really then, the suspect involved, the best thing you can do is kind of like be compliant, listen, and just kind of roll with it. Otherwise, the officer is going to try to, start something. So could be a problem as well. And lastly, there are, of course, issues with the officer in general related to their education, their belief system, how they interact, what experience they have on the job, what sort of training they've had, what professional development issues they've had, and so on, that also play a role into police decision making. So the bottom line of this, right, is that all of these factors are going to yield an influence on police actions. So without understanding like police actions, right, and all the factors go into it, it can, like without understanding the context of it, it really becomes difficult to understand a police officer's behaviors, why they do what they do, why they do not do certain things, and the like, right? So part of this then is, how do we regulate this? Because if we know that decisions are not going to be constant across police departments or across police officers, how do you regulate this issue? And like what factors should play important most? A lot of the disparities that we have about police misconduct, they'll happen in one set of police departments, but not in others, and that really changes because it's a whole different culture, it's a different experience, a different environment, things like that. And I think we have a tendency as a public to mentally think of police officers as like all being the same, they have the same experience, they have the same, whatever. That's simply, just not true, right? Because it isn't true. Excuse me. It isn't true that police officers all behave and act the same way, have the same training, have the same peers, have everything like this, right? So we'll see like wide disparity. Yet at the same time, it feels like policing as an institution is completely flawed, right? So what do we do then to end it? Because we do want to end misbehavior. We do want to control discretion. We want to have more consistent outcomes. We want to have fair and just outcomes as well, right? We want to have outcomes that do not disproportionately affect a certain, kind of people in certain circumstances and the like, right? So what do we do to do that? I think it'll be a good place to end here. I think the other stuff you guys can handle yourself. But that'll also be a good source of some questions to ask on Packback, so hopefully you find those